Hi there and welcome to my reflections on the story and the life of Jesus. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the power and the importance of reconciliation. Jesus' disciples, they come to him and they ask him a really huge question, asking him, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Who will it be? And Jesus, like he always does, looks around and sees what he has around with him. And then he picks up a child and he says, unless you become like this child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Meaning, he goes on to say, unless you take up the lowly position of a child. You see, because children didn't have rights in those days, and they were kind of there, but they shouldn't, they didn't have any place. But Jesus says, if you willingly choose that humble position, you will be great. Showing again how the kingdom of God is an upside down kingdom. The way to be the greatest is to be the servant, the one who serves and humbles themselves. Then Jesus goes on this talk about sin and saying that woe to those who cause his little ones to sin. Yes, sin is part of this life, but it is better to remove sin out of your life and be maimed so that you can enter the kingdom of heaven rather than live a life full of sin but be thrown into the fires of hell. And he uses the example of, it's better if something in your hand causes you to sin, cut that hand off, because it's better to go to the kingdom of heaven with one hand than to enter the fires of hell with two. And he uses the same example with your eyes. And kind of just coming down to this, we've got to be humble enough to remove things out of our lives so that we can live a life that is for Jesus, as opposed to just living a life of pleasure, not having to sacrifice anything. But then Jesus goes on to talk again about a story of a shepherd that has 100 sheep, and 99 are safely in the field, but one of them has gone astray. And he's talking again, a continuation of this story of children and being of humble position and little ones. And he says that the shepherd cares so much about the one that is lost that he leaves the 99 in safety, and he goes and seeks and searches after the one that's lost, because God is distracted by his lost children. So we can see already in this beginning part of what Jesus is teaching is that reconciliation to God is so important. It's important to him, it's important for us that we can have reconciliation with God, that it is possible. But then the conversation turns slightly in saying that Peter comes to and says to Jesus, Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? Or someone who sins against me, should I be generous and forgive them up to 7 times? And Jesus blows it completely out of the water and says, no, Peter, I'm saying way bigger than that, 77 times. Kind of saying we're never to stop forgiving one another, because reconciliation with one another is important to God. So reconciliation with God is what Jesus is talking about, and reconciliation with one another. And he highlights this with one last parable in this teaching section, where he talks about this master who wants to now reconcile all of his accounts, and he wants to get what is owed to him. So he brings in one of his servants, and his servant begs and pleads for forgiveness because he owes him so much money. And the master reconciles and forgives the account and lets him go free. But then that same servant finds someone else who owes him a few hundred, like very little money at all. And instead of having the same mercy, reconciliation, and forgiveness that the master showed him, he cast that one into prison until all of his debts could be paid. And the other servants, they kind of tattletale on this guy. And the master is furious and saying, I forgave you. Should you not have forgiven others? And so as I close this talk for today, as I close on this reflection, here's my thought, here's my reflection after all this teaching of Jesus. Reconciliation is vital with us, between us and God. But Jesus also wants us to be reconciled to one another. There are so many things in this life that is actually causing us to sin against one another. And because of our differences, we don't want to reconcile with one another. We don't know how, it's too painful, whatever that is. But if reconciliation is so important to our God, that he would reconcile us to himself, how much more do you think that he wants us to be reconciled with one another? that reconciliation is on the forefront of his mind. It's on the forefront of his heart. He loves us so much that he wants us to be reconciled with him and with other people. And that takes humility. The humility of a child. To be able to say, I'm wrong, forgive me, I want to make friends, I want to get better together. Because we have to sacrifice our pride, admit if we're wrong, and then be willing to forgive other people as we've been forgiven. Maybe there's someone in your life right now, I know there are in mine, that I need to think about, how can I be reconciled to them? And if that's someone in your life, why don't you pray about it and then take some bold steps towards reconciliation? Well, God bless you. I hope it's been helpful to you. Let me know what reflections you are having right now through the book of Matthew. Let me know in the comment section. I read through them. I love to see it and I'll respond. God bless you, and I'll see you again in the next video.